He told me his business failed, but I found the offshore account. That sentence has lived rent-free in my head for years. It's the kind of truth that shatters your sense of reality, not with noise, but with silence. The kind of silence that hums in your ears, heavy and endless, like the moment right after a glass breaks. The day I discovered the account, the air in our house felt colder. Even the clock on the kitchen wall seemed to tick differently, louder, accusing. But before I tell you what I found, I should tell you what I thought I had. The calm before it all fell apart. My name is Mira. I used to believe I had the kind of marriage you could build a life on. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. My husband, Daniel, was a business owner. He ran a small logistics company he'd started with 2 college friends. I was a high school teacher. We met when we were both in our 20s, and back then, everything about him felt certain. He laughed easily. He smelled like cedarwood and coffee. He used to squeeze my hand twice whenever he said goodbye, a silent I love you. For the first 10 years, life was ordinary in the best way. We bought a small brick house in the suburbs. Spent weekends repainting walls, fighting over cabinet colors, and planting jasmine vines by the porch. Every Sunday morning, I'd make pancakes. He'd hum old Motown songs, flipping them like a pro, pretending to be a chef. We had routines that felt safe, coffee at dawn, late-night walks, whispered dreams about the future. I thought we were on the same team. When he told me he wanted to expand his business, I believed in him. He said he needed to invest. New trucks, new routes, more drivers. I watched him stay up late doing paperwork, his eyes tired but excited. So when he came home one night, shoulders heavy and voice tight, saying, "It's all gone, Mira. The business, it's failed," I didn't question it. I hugged him. I cried with him. I told him, "We'll get through it." Because that's what you do when you love someone. You believe their pain is real. The first cracks. After that night, things changed slowly. Daniel wasn't the same. He started spending more time running errands, sometimes gone for hours, no explanation. He stopped humming in the kitchen. He'd get irritated if I asked too many questions about the company's closure. When I offered to help, maybe go over the finances, talk to the accountant, he brushed me off. "You wouldn't understand, Mira. It's complicated." That word, complicated, became his shield. At first, I thought it was pride. He'd worked so hard, and now it was gone. I figured he was embarrassed. But embarrassment doesn't explain coldness. It doesn't explain disappearing phone calls at midnight, or the way he started locking his study door. He said he was trying to find investors for a new project, but his energy felt off. There was no excitement, no clarity, just secrecy. Money got tighter, too. We sold one of our cars. He told me he'd used up our savings to pay debts. I didn't complain. I even picked up after-school tutoring jobs to cover the bills. One night, while folding laundry, I caught a glimpse of an unfamiliar receipt sticking out from his jacket pocket. It was from a luxury watch store, nearly $1,800. He told me it was a client gift, bought before the business went under. I wanted to believe him. So I did. But something in me shifted that night. I couldn't shake the image of that watch, gleaming, unnecessary, expensive. Months went by. He grew more distant. Dinner conversations turned into short answers. Our lauger, gone. Every now and then, he'd hold me like he used to, just long enough to make me doubt my own instincts. He deve spir, you're my hawk, Mira. And I'd think, then why do I feel like you're slipping away? He stopped checking the mail. Stopped opening bank statements. I began paying the utilities myself. I told myself I was helping. I told myself it was temporary. But every time I looked at him, I saw a stranger. His eyes, once warm, now darted away whenever I asked about money. Then came the day everything began to unravel. It started with a letter, one he didn't mean for me to see. It was a dull Wednesday evening. Hen tapping gently against the window, the cell off wet half drifting through the open kitchen door. I was clearing out the junk drawer when I found it, an envelope from a bank I didn't recognize. It was addressed to Mr. Daniel Hale but marked confidential, account statement enclosed. It wasn't one of our usual banks. We only had 2, both local. This one had a foreign logo. I froze. I shouldn't have opened it. But my hands were trembling before my conscience could catch up. Inside was a statement showing deposits in amounts I could barely process, tens of thousands, spread over months. The bank was registered in the Cayman Islands. My mind went blank. I stared at the paper, trying to find a logical reason, some innocent explanation. But there was none. He said his business failed. He said he'd lost everything. And here was proof of the opposite. That night, I sat across from him at dinner, pretending nothing was wrong. I watched him eat, slow, calm, deliberate. I noticed the way he chewed, how he avoided my eyes. My heart thudded so loud it drowned out the sound of his fork against the plate. I wanted to scream, to throw the paper in his face. But something inside me, maybe fear, maybe dignity, told me to wait. So I did. That night, when he fell asleep, I lay awake listening to his breathing. Each exhale felt like a lie I could hear. And that was the moment I knew, whatever was left of us had just changed forever. The next morning, the house felt wrong. Det grave, like de calbi fora thunderstorm. Daniel was humming again, something he hadn't done in months, as if the night before hadn't existed. I watched him pour his coffee, black and precise, the way he always liked it. He smiled at me, casual. "You're quiet today," he said. "I didn't sleep well," I answered. "Too much grading again." "Something like that." He kissed my forehead before leaving for a meeting. When the door shut behind him, I sat there for a full minute, listening to the click of the lock, the faint hum of his car engine fading down the street. Then I walked straight to his study. He had changed the password on his laptop months ago. I used to think it was because he had client information he didn't want mixed up with mine. But now, it was because of that account. Equal diffuit. I started searching the old-fashioned way, papers, drawers, files. He was meticulous, but not perfect. Inside a thick folder labeled Insurance, I found a crumpled piece of paper. On it were numbers, long strings of them, and the word CYINV. My heart pounded. CAY. Gaming. I took photos of everything on my phone, hands shaking. Then I sat down and cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears that tasted of salt and exhaustion. How do you mourn something that hasn't died yet, but already feels gone? Over the next few weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. By day, I still taught English to high schoolers. By night, I turned into a detective, quiet, methodical, desperate. I started with our shared email. I noticed he'd created filters to hide messages from certain senders. When I turned them off, there they were, notifications from that same offshore bank, disguised as newsletter emails. My chest tightened as I clicked through them. Transfers, deposits, even currency conversions. All dated after his supposed business collapse. It was clear now, he hadn't lost everything. He had moved it. And he had lied to my face, every single day since. Still, I couldn't just accuse him. Daniel was careful, persuasive, the kind of man who could make you doubt your own memory. If I confronted him without proof he couldn't deny, he'd twist it, make me the paranoid wife. So I gathered evidence. Screenshots, statements, photos. I backed everything up to a drive he didn't know about. One night, I called an old friend, Lydia, an accountant who used to work with small business clients. I told her part of the story, leaving Daniel's name out. She hesitated. "Mira, if what you're saying is true, that's fraud. Tax evasion, maybe worse. You need to be careful." I thanked her, but inside I was boiling. Fraud. He was not only lying to me, he was breaking the law. And still sleeping beside me every night, pretending to be the man I married. It happened on a Saturday. He came home later than usual, smelling faintly of whiskey. I was sitting in the living room, the envelope on the table. He stopped in the doorway. "What's that?" "You tell me," I said, my voice steady though my hands trembled. He frowned, setting his keys down. "Mira, what's going on?" I slid the letter toward him, the statement from the Cayman Bank. "You said your business failed." He froze. His eyes flicked to the paper, then to me. For the first time in years, he looked caught off guard. "I can explain," he started. No, I said quietly. You can try to explain, but I think we both know what this is. He sat down slowly, rubbing his temples. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Daniel? Because it looks like you hid money while I was working extra hours to keep the lights on. He sighed, heavy and frustrated, as if I were the problem. Mira, you don't understand how business works. I had to move funds around. It was temporary. If I kept it in the local account, creditors would have seized it. You told me you lost everything. I had to, he snapped. You would have panicked. I trusted you. The word story out of me before I could stop them. He leaned back, jaw tightening. You should be grateful I protected us. Protected us? By lying. By hiding money while I borrowed from my sister to pay the water bill. His silence was worse than shouting. He just stared, like he was calculating something. Finally, he said, You've always been dramatic. That's your problem. And right there, right in that smug, dismissive tone, something inside me cracked. The love I'd been clinging to all those years just broke. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just packed my emotions away, neatly, like files in a drawer. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, while he was out, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the one Lydia recommended, who specialized in financial fraud within marriages. We met quietly the following week. I handed over everything, the bank statements, the screenshots, the emails. She looked at me with a mix of sympathy and professional focus. Mira, she said, if these documents are authentic, your husband's in serious trouble. And you need to protect yourself, legally and financially. She advised me to open a new account in my name only, transfer my salary, and gather proof of my contributions to the household. I followed every instruction. I became a ghost in my own home, polite, invisible, strategic. Daniel still thought I was in the dark. He even began being affectionate again, cooking dinner, kissing my cheek. It was almost funny, the performance. The arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. But I had already made my plan. One evening as he poured wine for us both, I looked at him, really looked. The man I once adored was now a stranger wearing his skin. He smiled, saying, Things are going to be fine again soon. I've got something big coming. I smiled back. I bet you do. He didn't catch the irony. Because I'd already contacted the authorities. And the something big that was coming was about to hit him harder than he ever imagined. By the time I contacted the Financial Crimes Unit, I wasn't trembling anymore. I was calm, eerily calm. Maybe because I'd already cried every tear I had left. The officer I spoke with, a woman named Agent Ruiz, was patient and firm. She said she needed every document I could provide. I sent her the scanned statements, the photos of Daniel's notes, even screenshots of the hidden email filters. When she called me back 2 weeks later, her tone had changed. Mira, she said, we've confirmed activity consistent with offshore tax evasion. We're opening a formal case. You need to keep this confidential until we move. That word, move, echoed in my mind. For years I had been the one reacting, adjusting, accommodating. Now, for once, I was the one in motion. But I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because I finally realized the person I'd loved wasn't who he said he was, and if I didn't act, he'd destroy whatever remained of my life too. Daniel became more relaxed as weeks went on, almost cheerful. He thought I'd stopped asking questions because I'd given up. He started talking about new opportunities, traveling to meet investors again. I just nodded, playing the role I'd played for years, the trusting wife. But every night, after he fell asleep, I documented everything. Phone calls, receipts, even his travel details. I knew there'd come a time when the authorities would ask for them. It's strange how quickly love can turn into distance. You share a bed, but you might as well be sleeping oceans apart. I could hear his breathing beside me, steady and calm, and think how many lies live behind that rhythm. One Friday morning, I woke to a message from Agent Ruiz. Thank you for your patience. We have enough evidence to proceed. Please do not alert him. We'll coordinate with you when we're ready. I remember reading that text 3 times. My hands were cold. My heart was steady. Something inside me whispered, it's almost over. It happened on a Tuesday. Daniel was getting ready to leave for another one of his mysterious meetings. He wore the navy suit I bought him for our anniversary, the one he'd once spilled wine on and I'd stayed up late trying to save. I remember thinking how absurd it was that he still looked handsome. He turned to me before leaving, brushing invisible lint off his sleeve. Don't wait up tonight, he said. Might be a late dinner with a client. I smiled gently. Of course. An hour later, 2 unmarked cars pulled up to our driveway. The knock on the door was quiet but firm. When I opened it, Agent Ruiz stood there with 2 officers behind her. Mrs. Hale, she said, we're here for Daniel. I nodded. He's on his way to the airport. They thanked me, gave me a brief rundown, and left. I watched them drive away, their taillights vanishing around the corner. It was surreal, watching the wheels of justice turn for someone you used to share dreams with. Later that afternoon, the call came. Daniel had been detained at the airport for questioning. Customs flagged his name as part of an ongoing investigation. He'd been carrying multiple account documents in his laptop bag. When I hung up, I didn't feel joy. I didn't even feel anger. Just impotence. It's strange how justice can feel like grief. For days, our phone rang endlessly. His business partners, family, friends. I said little. Most people were polite but curious. A few whispered judgment behind my back. Did you know about it? Wasn't she a teacher? How could she not notice? That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just ruin your trust in others, it makes others stop trusting you. I kept my head down, focused on work. The school staff was kind, they knew something was wrong but didn't pry. My students, sweet and oblivious, still called me Miss Hale and asked about deadlines. It grounded me, reminded me there was a world outside my marriage. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to contact me from the holding facility. He left voicemails I didn't answer. The first few were pleading, then angry, then quiet. Mira, he said once, voice low, almost defeated. You don't understand. I did it for us. To protect us. You've ruined everything. But that wasn't true. I hadn't ruined anything. He had. When the news broke publicly, a short article in the local paper titled, Small Business Owner Under Investigation for Financial Misconduct, it spread like wildfire. Neighbors who used to wave from across the street suddenly looked away. His mother called, crying, asking if it was true. He's my son, she said, voice trembling. He's made mistakes, but he's not a bad man. I stayed gentle. I know he's your son, but he's not the man you think he is. She hung up crying. I spent that night sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the cicadas. For the first time, I let myself breathe. I thought of all the quiet years I'd spent believing in him, defending him, explaining his moods to myself. And I realized, sometimes the hardest part of leaving isn't walking away from someone you love. It's walking away from the version of yourself who believed in them. A few months later, the case moved forward. Daniel accepted a plea deal, restitution, probation, financial penalties. We finalized the divorce quietly. He didn't contest anything. Maybe guilt, maybe exhaustion. I sold the house. The jasmine vines I'd planted were blooming again, curling over the porch rails. I remember clipping one last sprig before I left, the scent sharp and sweet. I moved into a small apartment near the school. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every corner, every capi, every pillow chosen by me, touched by lies. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. One evening, months later, I found an old photo, Daniel and me, sitting on the kitchen floor, laughing over spilled pancake batter. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in a box labeled, Past Life, and tucked it away. Because closure isn't forgetting. It's remembering without bleeding. And when people ask me now if I'd do it all over again, I say this. Ide still love. Ide still trust. But the never silence my own intuition again. Because the moment you start doubting your own truth to protect someone else's comfort, you're already disappearing. The first few months after the divorce felt like walking through fog. I'd wake up in the mornings expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, that familiar sound of the coffee grinder starting up. Instead, there was just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic outside. I didn't realize how much silence could hurt until then. But slowly, I began to fill it, not with noise, but with myself. I redecorated my small apartment piece by piece. The first thing I bought was a new dining table, small enough for one but wide enough for company if I ever wanted it. Then I got a plant, a fiddle leaf fig that I named Hope. It stood by the window, stretching toward the sunlight like it knew something I didn't yet. E starte de jornalinha alguém. Every night, I'd write one thing I'd learned about myself that day. Some entries were short, I didn't cry today. Others were long and raw, I deserve someone who tells me the truth even when it's inconvenient. For the first time in years, I stopped trying to manage someone else's emotions and started tending to my own. About 6 months after Daniel's sentencing, I got a call from his mother again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe compassion, got the better of me. "Mira," she said softly, "I just wanted you to know Daniel's been attending counseling. He talks about you a lot." I didn't know how to respond. She continued, "He said you were always the good one. That he thought he was protecting you, but now he sees he was protecting his own pride." Her voice trembled. "He asked me to tell you he's sorry." I closed my eyes. There was no satisfaction in hearing it, only a quiet ache, like pressing on a bruise that still hasn't healed. "Thank you," I said gently. "I hope he gets better." When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my lap. Forgiveness didn't come suddenly, it came in fragments. A deep breath here. A lighter step there. It wasn't about letting him off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the weight of bitterness. Because holding on to anger only keeps you bound to the person who hurt you. And I was ready to walk away. Truly this time, I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. My therapist, a calm woman named Denise, asked me one question that stayed with me. "When did you first start silencing yourself for his comfort?" I didn't know how to answer right away. But over the weeks, the memories surfaced, small, quiet moments I'd brushed aside. The time he interrupted me mid-sentence at a dinner party, and I laughed it off. The time he dismissed my worries about money, and I told myself not to nag. I realized I'd been erasing myself long before he betrayed me. And that realization hurt, but it was also freeing. Because once you understand how you lost your voice, you can start to reclaim so I did. I joined a local women's writing group. The first night, I almost didn't go. I stood by the door, clutching my notebook, telling myself I didn't belong. But when I sat down and started reading a short story, inspired by my life, something inside me opened. The other women nodded, eyes glistening, some even reaching out to squeeze my hand. One said, "You're not alone." That sentence changed something in me. For so long, I'd felt invisible. Now, I felt seen. One sunny afternoon, I went back to our old neighborhood. I parked by the curb in front of the house we'd shared, the one with the jasmine vines I'd planted years ago. The new owners had painted the porch a pale blue. The vines had grown wild, climbing higher than I'd ever let them before. I stood there for a few minutes, breathing in the familiar scent. It no longer hurt. I whispered, "You're free now," though I wasn't sure if I was talking to myself or to the memory of who I used to be. Before I left, I plucked a single jasmine flower and tucked it into my notebook. A small token, not of loss, but of growth. Looking back, I don't see myself as a victim. I see a woman who loved deeply, who trusted fully, and who learned the hard way that love without honesty is just an illusion. If there's one thing life taught me through Daniel's betrayal, it's this. You can survive almost anything if you stay true to yourself. Money comes and goes. Trust can be rebuilt, but sometimes not with the same people. And peace, real peace, doesn't come when someone apologizes. It comes when you stop needing the apology to move on. Today, I still wear my wedding ring, but not on my finger. I keep it in a small glass box on my bookshelf, next to a framed quote that says, "She remembered who she was, and the game changed." Because it did. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just awake. So if you've ever found yourself staring at someone you love and realizing you no longer recognize them, I see you. If you've ever believed a lie because the truth was too painful to face, I understand you. And if you're still standing, still breathing, still hoping, you're already stronger than you think. We can't always control what others do to us, but we can choose how we rise after. I chose to rebuild, brick by brick, word by word, breath by breath. And I'm still rebuilding. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have turned him in? Or would you have walked away quietly? I'd love to know what you would have done. Thank you for listening to my story. And if it touched you, if it made you feel seen, please subscribe and share. Because somewhere out there, another woman is still searching for her truth. And maybe, just maybe, she'll find it here.